They didn't expect me to show up. That's why no one saved me a seat. I pulled into the estate just as the late afternoon sun dipped behind the gentle hills of Napa Valley, streaking the sky with amber and lavender. The vineyard's gravel crunching under the tires of my rental car felt louder than it should have. As I parked, my eyes landed on the perfectly arranged floral arches and a valet in a bow tie standing stiff by the guest entrance, clipboard in hand. He hesitated when I stepped out, smoothing the navy blue jumpsuit I'd ironed twice that morning. "Name?" he asked, eyes flicking to the scarf draped over my shoulders. "Jillian Harper," I answered. His brow furrowed. "I don't see you on the list, ma'am." "Of course you don't," I said with a small smile. "But my father asked me to come. That should be enough." He wavered for a second, then nodded and motioned me through. I walked the path alone, heels nearly silent on the pebbled walkway. My heart beat against my ribs, not fast but firm, like it knew it didn't belong here either. No one was waiting. No welcoming hugs. Just the faint sound of jazz and clinking glassware drifting from the garden. The estate opened up like something from a lifestyle magazine. Round tables dressed in white linens spread across the lawn, flanked by hedges trimmed within an inch of their lives. Strings of lights floated overhead like suspended stars, and a soft breeze tugged at the hem of my scarf, the one Mom gave me when I landed my first consulting job. She later told me it aged me too much. "No man wants a woman who looks like she's already seen the end of the story," she'd said. Guests dotted the lawn, holding champagne flutes with effortless grace. Vanessa stood near the center, radiant in blush pink, surrounded by the Inmans. She laughed easily, brushing a curl behind her ear, her new engagement ring catching the light like it was doing a pirouette. I took a step closer. Her eyes caught mine and slid past like I was a shadow someone had forgotten to turn off. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just kept walking. My father hovered near the buffet table, his tie slightly loosened, pretending to read the label on a bottle of wine. He didn't make eye contact. My mother stood beside a group of women, maybe aunts or old church friends, sipping from a long-stemmed glass and nodding. When she saw me, her mouth thinned. She didn't move, but her lips formed silent words I'd grown used to seeing. "Why are you here?" I adjusted the scarf slightly, letting it anchor me. As I reached the outer ring of tables, a voice sliced through the music. "Is that the spinster?" Aunt Janine's voice, unmistakable. I turned slightly, catching her sharp smile. "And that scarf," she added, raising her brow like she'd found something unpleasant on the bottom of her shoe. "Didn't she wear that to her dad's retirement dinner?" What a statement. Someone snorted beside her, a cousin, maybe, or one of Vanessa's bridesmaids. I didn't look. "She scared off Paul, remember?" Janine continued. "Too smart, too ambitious. Some women forget what men actually want." I bit the inside of my cheek and kept walking. 3 years ago, Paul and I had sat through another one of these gatherings hand in hand, smiling for family photos, pretending like it meant something. I found out later that night, by accident, that he told a friend I was practical for now, but not the mothering type. I packed my things and walked away. From him. From this house. From the illusion that if I was quiet and successful enough, I'd earn their pride. Vanessa had sent me a single message afterward. "You'll regret choosing a title over a table setting." She never mentioned it again. But she never forgot. I made my way to the farthest table, tucked near a small stone fountain that burbled politely, almost as if it didn't want to disturb the others. No place card. No setting. Just a chair left out of the loop like me. I sat down and wrapped my fingers around the glass of water in front of me. It was full, the condensation trailing down like it wanted to escape the stem. I didn't drink. A group of young guests at the next table turned their heads. One of them, a teenager in a floral dress, leaned in and whispered something. A man beside her chuckled. "She intimidates men," someone said, not softly. "Too much success, not enough softness," another added. I took a slow breath and let the words hang. I'd heard versions of that line in boardrooms, conference calls, even dates that ended after appetizers. It was exhausting how unoriginal judgment could be. A server passed nearby. I raised a finger slightly. "May I have a napkin?" He nodded, then disappeared. He didn't come back. I straightened in my seat, smiled as if none of it chipped anything. That, I'd learned, was the armor they didn't expect. I'd worn it in rooms where I was the only woman, the only minority, the only one with a plan no one wanted to hear until they saw the numbers. And yet, here, among family, I was invisible again. A breeze lifted the edge of my scarf. I caught it gently, smoothing it against my collarbone. That's when I heard it. A shift. It wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. The music didn't stop, but it wavered. A low hush passed over the crowd like a soft wave brushing a too-perfect arrangement. Silverware paused midair. Someone turned. Then another. A subtle ripple of attention spreading from the far side of the garden. I followed their gaze. Someone had just arrived. And everyone noticed. The first thing I noticed wasn't his face. It was how everyone else stopped talking. A string quartet had taken over from the jazz trio. Their bows moved in slow, reverent arcs as dusk settled over the vineyard, coloring the candlelit tables with a warm golden hue. The breeze had stilled. The laughter, once casual and frequent, dimmed to murmurs, then to nothing at all. It was the kind of silence you don't realize you've been waiting for until it happens. I looked up from my untouched glass of water, sensing the collective attention shifting. Heads were turning. Shoulders stiffened. Even the waitstaff paused mid-step. And then I saw him. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a black linen suit so tailored it whispered old money. Mr. Frederick Lasker. I knew who he was long before he spoke. You don't spend 4 years in strategic development without knowing the man who once turned a flailing logistics company into a global standard. But I hadn't expected to see him here. Not in person. And certainly not walking directly toward me. He didn't look left or right. He didn't offer polite nods or brief acknowledgments. He walked with a quiet, unwavering purpose through the center of the gathering, like parting silk with his presence alone. When he reached my table, he stopped. The silence grew heavier, almost ceremonial. My heart ticked upward, but my face stayed still. Years of practice. He bowed, not a simple dip of the head. A full, deliberate bow from the waist, meant to be seen, meant to mean something. "Miss Jillian Harper," he said clearly, each syllable carrying through the night air. "It's been far too long." I didn't speak at first. I wasn't sure if my voice would betray me. Across the lawn, I could feel Vanessa's gaze pierce through the air like a thread pulled too tight. My father's hand had stilled, halfway to raising his wineglass. My mother's fingers curled into her clutch. The whispers started, rising like the hush before a storm. "She knows him. Is that really him?" She didn't say anything about this. Mr. Lasker straightened and gave a small nod before pulling out the chair beside me. He sat down like a man claiming his seat at the table of someone he respected. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, his voice low now, meant only for me. "I wasn't invited," I replied. He chuckled softly, not unkindly. "That makes 2 of us." I glanced sideways at him. His eyes were thoughtful, assessing, not unkind, but precise. The kind of gaze that had probably undone entire departments with a single look. "Do they know?" he asked, tilting his chin slightly toward the rest of the garden. I shook my head. "They know what they choose to remember." He leaned back slightly, watching the lights flicker in the glass lantern overhead. "You once told your professor," he said slowly, "that you were used to being invisible, but that it still stings when it's your own blood." I blinked. That conversation wasn't public. That wasn't on a resume. That wasn't even in my exit interview when I walked away from Atlas. "How do you?" He raised a hand, silencing me gently. "You kept Atlas alive when the board wanted to tear it apart," he said. "You rewrote the cross-platform integration in 2 weeks. You led with discipline and no ego. But you asked not to be named." I hadn't told anyone about that. Not really. Just the professor, and once a friend over tea, barely more than a whisper. "It wasn't about credit," I murmured. "It was about fixing what was broken." He gave a small nod. "And yet credit finds its way to those who deserve it, eventually." More heads were turned now. The conversations had stopped entirely at 2 nearby tables. Vanessa's mouth was parted slightly, as if caught mid-breath. One of the groomsmen, a friend from the Inman side, elbowed another guest and whispered something. I didn't need to hear it to know the tone had shifted. I watched as my mother adjusted her posture and smoothed her dress. A woman 2 tables over leaned toward her, eyebrows raised. My mother shook her head once, eyes still on me. Mr. Lasker reached into his jacket pocket and slid a small black envelope onto the table. The paper was thick, sealed with a wax crest I didn't recognize. "Open this alone," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I stared at the envelope. It looked out of place against the linen, like a letter misplaced in time. Or in intention. "Is this?" He didn't answer. Just smiled and leaned back again. The quartet started a new song, something slower now with more cello. The music filled the space between what had just happened and what it meant. I didn't touch the envelope. Not yet. The candle on the table sputtered briefly in the wind before settling. Across the lawn, no one was laughing anymore. The clink of glasses had dulled. Even Vanessa, with her perfect hair and perfect ring and perfect table of admirers, had fallen completely still. Mr. Lasker stood. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said simply. And then he was gone, melting back into the garden like a closing parenthesis. I sat still for a moment, the envelope before me like a door only I had been asked to open. A hand brushed my shoulder. I turned. Vanessa stood there, smiling tightly. "Well," she said, "that was unexpected." I didn't sleep. The envelope sat on my coffee table like a loaded question, thick and matte black, with that wax seal still intact, unbothered by my pacing, my overthinking, my half-finished cup of chamomile now cold beside it. I wrapped myself in the old gray sweater I always reached for when the world felt too loud. Outside, the spring rain rolled down the windows in soft rivers, catching the silver reflections of the Chicago skyline. It was a Saturday morning, but the city looked like it had paused with me muted, waiting. The words came back, uninvited. "When the storm comes, don't ask if it's your fault, ask if it's your test." Lasker's voice. TEDx a lifetime ago. Back then, I thought it was motivational fluff. Now it felt like a dare. I sat on the edge of the couch and reached for the envelope. My fingers hesitated at the seal, feeling the grain of the wax, dense, cool, smooth in its finality. I broke it. The sound was softer than I expected. Inside was a folded letter written in blue ink. Not typed. Handwritten, elegant, precise. and beneath it a legal packet signed already. The header read, Offer of Appointment, Executive Director, Lasker Foundation for Ethical Innovation. I didn't read the packet yet. Instead, I unfolded the letter. Jillian. Some people rise by luck, others by noise. You rose by necessity and in silence. That takes more strength than most will ever understand. I've seen your work. I've read your code. I've watched what you didn't say while others took credit. You didn't push to be seen, but you never disappeared. That's rarer than brilliance. Consider this role not a gift, but a mirror. It won't flatter you. It will test you. And it will belong to you if you accept it. The board is aligned. You have full authority to restructure the division as you see fit. Let me be clear. I did not choose you to make a point. I chose you because no one else could hold the seat with quiet power the way you can. Yours, F. Lasker. The scent of the ink still lingered, subtle, sharp, slightly metallic. I held the paper against my knee, rereading that line about the seat belonging to me. It didn't feel real. A year ago, I was sitting at my parents' kitchen table, being politely interrupted while talking about supply chain ethics because someone wanted more gravy. My father told me I was too serious. Vanessa said I needed to learn how to relax into a room. Relax into a room. Like I was made of tension. Like my presence needed softening, as if I had to earn my right to exist in their space. A drop of tea fell from my cup as I lifted it, unnoticed until it splashed onto the bottom corner of the letter. I wiped it gently. The ink smudged just slightly, as if to remind me it was real. I set the letter down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I remembered the dinner table from high school. How they'd all ask about Vanessa's ballet recitals or Darren's sports trophies. When it came to me, the conversation shifted to who wants more salad? I'd stopped expecting anything by the time I was 17. But even then, I kept showing up, report cards in hand, achievements filed away neatly, waiting for someone to notice. No one did. Until now. The rain deepened, a steadier rhythm against the glass, like someone tapping gently to keep me present. My phone buzzed. Elise Monroe. I picked it up. Hey, her voice came through warm, as always. Just checking brunch is still on tomorrow? For Season's rooftop? I got us a window table. Yeah, I said, voice a little hoarse. Still on. You okay? I think so. A pause. You sound like you just read a will. I laughed. Not far off. Well, whatever it is, you deserve the good stuff, Jilly. Don't overthink it. Wear something that makes you feel dangerous. After we hung up, I wandered to the bedroom. My closet was a mix of neutral tones, safe, sharp, respectable. Things you could wear to blend in, but never to arrive. I found a dress in the back, forgotten, still tagged. Deep sapphire blue, with clean lines and quiet confidence. Not loud, but not invisible either. I laid it out on the bed, smoothed the fabric once, then twice. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about being seen. For the first time, fully and on my terms. I didn't walk in like I owned the room. I walked in like I finally belonged to one. The elevator doors slid open with a muted chime, and sunlight spilled into the rooftop atrium of the Four Seasons. The rain had passed, but the clouds lingered like memory, soft and slow-moving. From up here, the city looked polished and far away, like someone else's postcard. I stepped out in the sapphire blue dress, feeling it shift around my knees like a soft current. The scent of roasted coffee beans mingled with warm croissants and something citrusy, maybe lemon zest. A pianist tucked in the corner played something mellow and rich. My heels tapped softly against the tiled floor, the sound somehow steadier than I felt. 12 chairs were set around a gleaming table of ivory linen and crystal glassware. All filled except for one. Dead center. Between Elise and Mr. Lasker. The nameplate shimmered in brass. Ms. Jillian Harper. Executive Director, Lasker Foundation. No one greeted me. Their eyes did though. All of them. Even the inmates, who were supposed to be too rich and too distracted to care. My sister's husband adjusted his napkin twice. My mother blinked 3 times too fast. And Vanessa. Vanessa didn't even look. But her posture stiffened, like someone adjusting to the presence of a camera. Mr. Lasker stood as I approached. "Ms. Harper," he said with quiet warmth, "we were just about to order." His voice sliced through the murmurs like a bow on water, no resistance, just gravity. I pulled back my chair. The fabric cushion was firm, the napkin folded into a crisp triangle. Elise caught my eye with a flicker of reassurance, calm, subtle, unspoken. "Thank you," I said, and sat. No one passed me the menu. I didn't need one. The waiter arrived promptly. "For you, Miss Harper?" "Coffee," I replied. "Black." "And the salmon Benedict." He nodded without writing it down. Power, I'd learned, wasn't loud, it was assumed. Mr. Lasker raised his glass, but not too high. "Just enough." "A toast," he said simply. "To leaders who don't have to shout to be heard." Silence. Then a few glasses rose, hesitantly. My father sipped before toasting. My mother's bracelet clinked against the stemware as if her wrist had forgotten how to hold still. Vanessa looked straight ahead. I turned slightly toward Mr. Lasker. "I appreciate the vote of confidence," I said quietly, not for the room, just for him. He nodded once. It was never a vote. It was recognition. The sunlight caught the nameplate again. Executive Director. I didn't need to touch it to know it was real. For once, I didn't need to prove I belonged. The seat said it for me. Elise leaned in gently. "This is the best coffee in the city, by the way. You picked well." I smiled. Small, but genuine. For once, brunch wasn't a performance. It wasn't a negotiation or a gauntlet of passive-aggressive questions wrapped in hollandaise. It was just a table, a name, a chair. Vanessa cleared her throat. "So, Jillian, you're working with Mr. Lasker now." Her voice was light, but her grip on the fork was surgical. I met her gaze, finally. "Yes." "For what exactly?" "Impact initiatives, starting with sustainable tech grants. The full rollout begins next quarter." My father said nothing. My mother blinked again. Vanessa offered a smile that didn't quite make it to her eyes. "That's unexpected." "No," I replied. "It's overdue." The pianist shifted into a familiar tune, "Someone to Watch Over Me," played in soft minor chords. I sipped my coffee. Somewhere between the linen napkins and the citrus glaze, I realized this wasn't about revenge. I wasn't there to gloat or correct or punish. This was redirection. This was arrival. And not a single person at that table could take it away from me. The salmon arrived on bone-white porcelain. The hollandaise was bright and golden, with a sprig of dill that seemed too elegant to eat. I cut in, took the first bite. Savory, warm, perfect. Then my purse vibrated against the base of my chair. I reached down, subtly, slipped my hand into the bag. An unknown number blinked across the screen. I glanced around. No one else noticed. I answered softly, turning just enough away to catch the breeze that danced over the edge of the rooftop. "Hello." The line crackled. Then a woman's voice, low and unfamiliar. "Miss Harper, There's something you need to see. Now. You've always hated me for not needing applause, I once told her. But maybe you just hated the mirror. It was after 7 when I got home. The city was draped in a fine drizzle, the kind that didn't quite soak, but refused to leave. From my window, the skyline shimmered, half concealed, half showing off, like it couldn't decide whether to dazzle or disappear. The salmon pink folder sat quietly on the coffee table, untouched since brunch. I'd left it exactly where I knew I would, on the slate stone between the half-finished tea and a bowl of rosemary almonds I hadn't refilled in weeks. I didn't sit. I stood at the window, tracing raindrops with my fingertip against the glass, watching them collide and separate. The air smelled like wet concrete and decisions. The phone rang. Just once. Then again. Vanessa. I didn't answer right away. Let it ring once more. Let the moment settle like dust. Finally, I swiped. Jillian speaking. The silence on the other end wasn't awkward. It was rehearsed. Like she had waited for me to blink first. You're home, she said flatly. I am. Another pause. A faint sound like ice in a glass. She wasn't calling to congratulate me. You didn't tell anyone. You didn't ask. No, she said, exhaling. I guess I didn't. The rain pressed gently against the windows, soft like a whisper you almost miss. I sat down, crossed my legs slowly, then looked at the folder again. Why you? She asked, her voice smaller now, thinner. Why not me? There it was. Not even wrapped in pretense. Just raw. I looked around the room. The books I'd read twice. The quiet lamp I never replaced. The scarf folded on the arm of the couch. The same one Mom hated. Maybe, I said, because he saw me when no one else bothered to look. The silence didn't end. It just changed shape. I leaned back. You think I wanted this out of spite? That I planned some grand return? She said nothing. I didn't need applause, Vanessa. You needed it so badly, you forgot how to see the ones clapping for you. You've always thought you were better. No, I said, gently. I've always tried to be different. Another ice clink. A breath. And then, a click. She hung up. But I didn't cry. I didn't even blink for a while. The air in the room settled like flower dust, quiet, soft, honest. I picked up my phone again, almost instinctively, to scroll through our old messages. Birthday wishes with just an emoji. A forwarded meme. One thread that ended with, "You always ruin holidays." I hadn't replied to that one. I pressed the lock button, set the phone down, and this time I opened the folder. Inside, the documents waited, crisp, precise. At the top of the first page in black serif. Lasker Foundation Executive Appointment, Jillian Harper. Below that, a full staff directory. An outlined first-year vision. And a note scribbled in real ink. Lead with your silence. Speak only when it matters. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. The rain hadn't stopped. It just changed rhythm, now slower, steadier. Like a metronome for a new chapter. I reached for my phone again to check the time, and the message appeared without sound. Elise Monroe. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Final confirmation. Dress as you see yourself. Dress as I see myself. I closed my eyes. Not invisible. Not resentful. Not tolerated. Seen. They thought I wanted their approval. I just wanted my own chair. The elevator glided upward in silence. 57 floors above the city, above the noise, above the doubt. Elise stood beside me, holding a slim portfolio and a pen wrapped in velvet. She didn't say much, just smiled when our eyes met. I wasn't nervous. Not the way people think of nerves. It wasn't a flutter in my chest or sweat on my palms. It was steadier, like standing on solid ground after a long walk across ice. The doors opened directly into the boardroom. It was bright. Not fluorescent, but natural sunlight filtering through floor-to-ceiling glass, casting long shadows on the oak table. The skyline stretched behind the windows like a silent witness. 12 high-backed chairs formed a quiet arc. The farthest one had a small plaque. Silver letters. Harper J., Executive Director. Mr. Lasker stood by the window, arms loosely folded behind his back, watching clouds pass like they had somewhere better to be. He turned when he heard my steps. No greeting, no applause. Just a nod. I nodded back. "Good morning," I said. He gestured to the seat with a calm confidence, like the invitation had always been mine to accept. As I approached the chair, Elise placed the velvet-wrapped pen beside a small leather folder. The pen glinted. My initials were engraved in a delicate serif. JH. Not flashy. Just mine. I opened the folder. The final page of the contract waited for me, signature line untouched. I took the pen, uncapped it, and wrote my name with steady pressure. Not rushed. Not tentative. Each letter curved like it had been practicing this moment. I looked up. Lasker's smile barely reached his mouth, but his eyes held something warmer. "You didn't outsmart the system," he said. "You outlasted it." I exhaled, then handed him the folder. He signed, closed it. That was it. Years of proving, contorting, shrinking, done in 2 signatures. "Coffee?" Elise offered, her voice smooth, already knowing the answer. "Black," I said, and smiled. "And strong." She smiled back and left the room quietly. I took a moment to walk around the table, running my fingers gently along the wood grain. The chairs were tall but not imposing. The air had that particular stillness found only in spaces made for decision-making. No one else had arrived yet. They would. But this moment belonged to me. I returned to the seat with my name. And I sat. The chair didn't creak. It didn't resist. It received me like I had always belonged. From where I sat, I could see my reflection faintly in the glass, layered against the Chicago skyline, present, grounded, real. No spotlights. No applause. Just sunlight. I remembered what Mom used to say when I was younger and difficult and too loud at dinner. "You'll always be hard to place." Maybe I was. But not today. Today, I placed myself. Across the room, a screen blinked to life. It cycled through titles: CFO, VP Operations, Legal Counsel, then paused on mine. Executive Director, Harper J. It wasn't pride I felt. It was something quieter. Older. Like all the noise had finally moved outside my skin. I leaned back. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't "I told you so." This was me, present. Accounted for. Seen. I looked again at the reflection, then toward the skyline and whispered, not to anyone in the room, but to the space I had fought to occupy. I didn't raise my voice. I made them lean in. And finally, I smiled, not because they were watching, but because I didn't need them to. I didn't sit in the chair to prove anything. I sat down because, for once, I knew I didn't need to be invited. I just needed to be strong enough to walk in. Life can get us lost in the noise and prejudice, but if we don't lose ourselves, we'll eventually find our place. In life, not everyone needs to speak loudly to be heard. Sometimes, it's persistence and silence that makes people bow their heads. If this story reminds you of someone who has stood outside your family's dinner party, share your feelings. Who knows, just a thoughtful word at the right time might be enough to make them feel worthy of being at the table.